Perfect. So, hello, everybody. Lovely, lovely to see you. I'm Vicky Joffe, for those who don't know me, and I'm co-editor of Child Language Teaching and Therapy, together with my friend and colleague Judy Clegg, who is also on the call. A very, very warm welcome to you all, and I know that we have a huge number of people across the world, so this makes this summer CLTT annual lecture even more exciting. And no one will be surprised that we have the most number of people we've had for a lecture when you know that our speaker is Professor Sharynne McLeod. And it really gives us such pleasure and a real privilege to welcome and introduce Sharynne McLeod, who is a distinguished professor at Sturt University in Australia. Now, Sharynne actually needs really no introduction because everybody will know something about her. You probably won't know everything, and you certainly won't know all her achievements. So please do read her biography. But Sharynne has so many achievements. She is such a trailblazer and a real inspirational figure across the world, not only in speech and language therapy, but in child development, child education, law, human rights, social justice, and I can go on. Her work as an advocate, with the United Nations and World Health Organization for children and young people with speech, language, and communication needs and their families is really groundbreaking. And she really is just such a role model for each and every one of us. Sharynne, I can't see you, but I'm looking at you. I want to thank you so much for giving of your time to be here today. I know it's early evening in Australia, so thank you for being flexible. And from a CLTT perspective, Sharynne is a very, very good friend of ours. Sharynne is on the editorial board. She attends most of our editorial meetings, even though they're 11 p.m. or 12 a.m. midnight, and she always has a wealth of exciting suggestions. I know we're all in for a huge treat today, so I'm not going to say any more, but just with great pleasure and privilege, hand over to you, Sharynne. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you so much, Vicky. It's my absolute great pleasure to think about, do we really listen to children? Thank you to Judy and Vicky for inviting me, also the members of the editorial board. And I do actually enjoy sitting up, well, mostly at 11 p.m. or whatever time it is, and you're all eating your lunch and I am thinking about bed. But CLTT is a really special journal, and I still remember David Crystal talking about the development of that and the importance of the collaboration between education and speech pathology, speech and language therapy, I should say, because I'm in the UK, professionals and everybody else who really focuses on children's capacity to communicate. I'm going to begin, as we do in Australia, with an acknowledgement of country. Now, oftentimes when you hear me do this, acknowledging the country on which we work and live, you hear me saying it in my words. But today I have permission from some children to acknowledge where we live in their words. I've also got a URL at the bottom of another acknowledgement of country made by other Indigenous children that you may want to look at another time. So thank you, children, for acknowledging where we are today.
Thank you, the Wajiri people who made us share your land. We promise to look after us, all the people and animals too. Hello sky, hello wind.
And so hello, friends. And there's a hello from a kangaroo on campus at our university in Australia. Now, hello, friends. I understand that a number of days ago we sold out. There was only option for 250 attendees. And at the time, I understand these are the countries that you are joining us from. So thank you for coming from all over the world. It's extremely exciting. And please, say hello to each other in the chat. If we have a chat, don't we? Yeah, say hello, where you're from, and in your language, if you like. So bula to the people in Fiji, for example. Now, just to remind you, pardon me, what you signed up for. This is the abstract. So we have signed up to think about communication as a human right for all. We have signed up to think about the Convention on the Rights of the Child and how we have given attention to the voice of children. We have particularly thought about arts-based methods, and you're going to see some absolutely lovely drawings, but also some powerful drawings and words from children. However, I want us to really interrogate what we do. So as communication specialists, we have the power to support children's voice and assist others to listen. I want us to think about how can we mature in our practices to enhance all children's participation within democratic processes in their families, schools, communities, and society. I think we are only at the very beginning of doing this work. I am using examples from our team and use it humbly, thinking that we are really not there and have a long way to go. At the end, we're going to talk about the idea that Vicky and Judy and I have been talking about having a special issue of child language teaching and therapy to take this work further. So think about the work that you do, think about the work that you could do that you may like to contribute to a special issue of CLTT in the future. So let's go. As we said, we're going to start with thinking about the United Nations and the World Health Organization. And I'm very, very, very honoured to have represented you all as speech language therapists and educators at the World Health Organization here and the UN here. And some of the work that I have done was with my colleague, Julie Marshall at Manchester Metropolitan University and Speech Pathology Australia. One of the things that has driven our work is that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights from 1948, a very long time ago, has Article 19, and that is that everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. Not just the cool people, not just the people that speak English or Chinese or Spanish or Arabic, the dominant languages in our world, but everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive and impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of frontiers. I think people who focus on children's communication are quite good at that, regardless of frontiers. Now, every so often, oh, hello, person from Isle of Man. I'm very, very happy to know that you are there. I don't think I've ever had anybody from the Isle of Man at my talks before, so you are a little bit special. In my presentations, I've got various QR codes, so they will take you directly to things that are relevant. I've also tried to have all of the references at the bottom of the screen. It was really hard to choose what to tell you about, so I'm going to do my best to show you a lot of things. We've also recently thought about not only communication as a human right in general, but how it actually is very important for every single one of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And I've been privileged to guest edit some special issues of the International Journal of Speech Language Pathology. For those of you who think Sustainable Development Goals are all about the planet, the United Nations actually said in 2015 that the Sustainable Development Goals are meant to provide a shared blueprint for peace and prosperity for people and the planet now and into the future. And actually, there are more Sustainable Development Goals about people than the planet. We just think about sustainability about cups of coffee, or plastic straws, or our trees and waterways, but actually there are more Sustainable Development Goals focused on people. And so it's really important to think about how enabling children's communication and children's voice is so important to peace and prosperity for the world, both now and into the future. Children can change the world, and I just thought that it's important to remind you of that fact, of two young women who as children, Greta Thunberg and Malala Yousafzai, are both names that you will have heard again and again. I just downloaded their summaries from Wikipedia and their images from Wikipedia, and you will know, just as young women and, you know, when they're children, Malala achieved the Nobel Peace Prize at the age of 17. In fact, one of the gentlemen in 1929, Korczak, who was involved in the work that led to the development of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, says children are not the people of tomorrow, but are the people of today. They have a right to be taken seriously and to be treated with tenderness and respect. They should be allowed to grow into whoever they were meant to be. The unknown person inside of each of them is our hope for the future. And here are some of our hopes for the future at the bottom of children who've been involved in some of our research. And both the children and their parents have given us permission to share their photographs. So these are two examples of children who, at the time that they were children, they've now grown into young women, were the people of today and should be allowed to grow into whoever they are meant to be. So let's think about how we can advocate to reduce the impact of speech, language, and communication needs, and also enable children and the world, the environment in which they live, to be able to listen to children and to enable children to receive and impart ideas and knowledge of any topic, regardless of frontiers. I am aware that there are people who are not speech language therapists or speech language pathologists or speech pathologists or logopedists or all the different names that we are often called around the world. There are people from many walks of life who have come to this lecture. So I want to just spend a couple of minutes to really enable you to think about the children I spend a lot of time thinking about. I think about children who have to do some work so that they can communicate, so that they can open doors. Communication is a key that can open doors so children can thrive. But in some of the work that we have done some time ago in a longitudinal study of 10,000 Australian children, we found 25% of parents of 4 to 5-year-olds were concerned about how their child talks and makes speech sound. And we've been able to undertake a number of studies following these children up until their teenage years, actually, not just me, but others in Australia and overseas. And here's a summary of some of the ways that these children who, when they're 4 to 5 years of age, if their parents are concerned about how they talk and make speech sounds, we have found that there is an association between their communication and their educational and social impacts. And even later on, there have been some documented impacts on their employment and well-being. Areas such as reading, writing, school achievement, bullying, peer relationships, enjoyment of school, and teacher-child relationships have been things that we have documented for these 25% of kids whose parents are concerned about their talking at 4 to 5 years of age. And these outcomes, thank heavens for my statistical colleagues such as Audrey Wang, have been shown to be over and above the effects of sex, age, language background, and socioeconomic position. Children with speech, language, and communication needs have a lot of important things to say. And in a study that I'm going to talk about a bit later that my colleagues Jane McCormack, Elise Baker, and Kate Crow did, there was one quote that a child said and submitted to the Australian government and said, "I believe that even though we are only children, we can still really make a difference in the world." And I agree. I believe that even though children are children, and not only children, but special children, they can still really make a difference in the world. So let's have a look at some of the ways that we've been listening. As communication specialists, and I include educators and teachers and psychologists and social workers and so many others as communication specialists as well, audiologists, speech language therapists, of course, we have the power to support children's voice and to assist others to listen, because of course, communication is a two-way process. There needs to be a receptive environment, and there needs to be the capacity to provide a communication that is able to be understood. This taps into the Convention on the Rights of the Child. And in fact, there are 2 articles in the Convention on the Rights of the Child that was published in 1989 that talk about children's voice or children's expression, freedom of opinion and expression. So let me just read them. Article 12 talks about states parties, which is like a country or a government, shall assure to the child who is capable of forming his or her own views the right to express those views freely in all matters affecting the child, not just matters that adults think are important, but all matters. The views of the child being given due weight in accordance with the age and maturity of the child. Now, there's a lot of conversation about what that second part means. And Laura Lundy, who is one of the most famous people that talks about children's voice from a law perspective, has published and recorded some important work about what that means. Our Early Childhood Voices presentation that she recorded has a good discussion of that. Article 13 says the child shall have the right to freedom of expression. And this is where our creativity about creating environments and opportunities for children is very important. This right shall include freedom to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas of all kinds, regardless of frontiers, either orally, in writing or in print, in the form of art, or through any other media of the child's choice. It's often of our choice. So let's have a look at what we've been doing. We have creatively engaged in child-friendly arts-based methods to provide children with the right to freedom of expression regardless of frontiers. And using arts-based methods has been one of our ways that we've done this for a long time. In fact, back in 2011, which feels like a short time ago, but in fact was 13 years ago, Sue Ralston and I published a book called Listening to Children and Young People with Speech, Language and Communication Needs, published by J&R Press in the UK. And it has about 30 or 40 chapters that are excellent, that provide so many different ideas and examples, but also theoretical and practical ways to listen to children and young people with speech, language and communication needs. Some of the frontiers that we talked about were arts-based methods, using drawing, photography, videos, questionnaires with emoji, like-it scales, interviews and talking mats. I've also popped down the side just some of the people in the UK, because I'm aware that this presentation has most people coming from the UK, because that's where the journal Child Language Teaching and Therapy is at home. And so some of my colleagues here are doing some amazing work. I'm presenting our work today, but there's excellent other work out there, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to capture that in a special issue in the future. Another area that we put together a long time ago, 20 years ago now, a group of speech pathologists in Australia, about 300 people, came up with the Speech Participation and Activity Assessment of Children, or the SPA-C. It's got many, many, many questions for the children's friends and their siblings and their parents and their soccer coach and their ballet teacher and their grandma and their school teacher. But this is the part of the SPA-C that seems to be most popular. And we've even used it as an outcome measure in some of our interventions. So the SPA-C is quite useful, and it's been translated into a number of languages like Afrikaans and Vietnamese and Turkish and some of the other languages. Because you'll know, for those of you who do know me, I am really passionate about enabling children who speak whatever language, whichever one of the 7,000 languages in the world, to also have a voice. Just last month, I think it was, a brand new book was published, and this presents some more frontiers for listening to children. My colleagues from Sturt University and I have been hosting a conference called the Early Childhood Voices Conference. We've hosted it twice, and in 2024, later this year, we're hosting it again. And this particular Springer publication comes out of the 2020 ECV conference. Here are some examples of some of the chapters that are in the book. There are actually 18 chapters, and it's a really nice book. We have, and we're very honoured to have Laura Lundy write a chapter about how her Lundy model actually applies to early childhood. Some of my colleagues from Australia have, teacher colleagues have developed a holistic self-report tool for children's listening at preschool. My colleague Carla Washington, who currently lives in Canada but does a lot of work in Jamaica, has published work about Jamaican children's drawings of talking. And then Michelle Pascoe and colleagues have talked about many voices, many languages, how to listen and learn from South African children. So it's a really fabulous book that's just been developed. Maybe you can borrow a copy from your library. I'm now going to talk to you about and show a few examples in a bit more detail about some of the work that we've been doing over time. This study was published in 2022, but we began this work in, oh gosh, about 2007 or something. So it's been work that we've been doing for a long time with my colleagues, Jane McCormack, Linda Harrison, and Erin Holliday. And Lindy McAllister was involved in some of this work as well. What we did was we developed the sound effects study during protocol. We used it with 124 Australian children who are aged 4 to 5 years, and we asked them to draw themselves talking to someone. We did ask their assent, and I've got some slides in a minute to talk about the difference between assent and consent, and asked for permission to retain the drawing. And we were very pleased that all the children let us keep a copy of the drawing. We wrote down and recorded what they said during the drawing. and actually videoed it at the time. The child was then asked particular questions about the drawing upon completion, and then we analysed the drawings and the answers together. Appendix A of this journal article has the entire protocol, even what coloured markers or felt tip pens or whatever you call them in your country, and how to hand the child the piece of paper on an angle so that they can decide, will they draw on it in portrait or landscape? We then undertook a meaning-making analysis and developed different focal points to analyse the drawings. And focal points are what our attention focuses on in the picture that gives us an indication as to how to approach the patient's psyche, according to Firth, or what seems unusual, emphasised, or important in the drawing. So I want to show you some of the focal points. These are the focal points that we came up with in this particular study of when we asked the child to draw themselves talking. We found that relationships and connection actually was the most important, well, not the most important, was drawn by more children than any other. Children also highlighted body parts and facial expressions. They highlighted talking and listening, probably unsurprisingly. There was a lot of positivity in their drawings. Some of them also had a sense of negativity and isolation, and I'm going to show you some examples in a sec. And some of them, of course, did not draw what we asked. And that was absolutely fine too. And I've got some examples of that as well. So let's have a look. These are some examples of how children accentuated ears and mouths. And I particularly like, this is Nelson talking to his friend with a large listening ear, and they're talking about chocolate frogs. These also, Nadia has large ears and a large mouth on herself as well. The children portrayed talking and listening through speech bubbles, and some of these children are learning to write, so they were writing letters in the talking. And this little fellow was talking about how he was angry, and so you can see that on the expressions of their faces. And this is how Orson drew sound waves of the talking between them. Proportion and positioning is also important. And I love the fact that Lex on the right is leaning towards his friend, and they also have their ears on. This little one with Emmett was the little brother. He drew himself in the relationship with his big brother, and then mum and dad are having a chat, and the cat's also involved in that as well. And some of the children really showed drawing, talking through the relationship and connection with others. Positivity was absolutely gorgeous. And Tessa actually drew herself with the speech pathologist. And this is the speech pathologist's necklace that she was drawing at the time during the research. And she invented them in a garden with the sunshine all shining over them. Tara, on the other hand, drew herself with a sparkly hula hoop, spreading sparkles around. And one of the nice things to see from these drawings is that the positioning on the page is something that my colleagues in psychology and child development and early childhood education often look at. And these images of positivity fill the page with excitement and joy. In contrast, oh, I'm so sorry. There we go. Negativity. When we asked Ewan to draw himself talking, he said he could only draw himself because no one would talk to him. Look at his choice of colours and also the fact that he is by himself. Isabel drew sad faces to demonstrate negativity. And of course, here we go. Philip drew a monster and Patrick drew an octopus and said that they didn't want to draw talking, and that's completely fine too. So in this study, we found that there were three main themes. We were really pleased because this was the largest study that we've ever seen or undertaken for seeing if children with speech and language difficulties can draw themselves talking. And they could. They typically chose to draw themselves with their family and friends, and they usually portrayed themselves as happy and positive when they were talking to their family and friends. And we also used the SPA-C Likert scale and asked them how they felt about talking too. And almost all of them said that they felt happy. This protocol has been used in many different countries. Suzanne Hoff has used it in Fiji, and Carla Washington and colleagues has used it in Jamaica. And I asked Carla if she could share some images from Jamaica of children drawing themselves talking. Here, oh, I'm so sorry, my mouse is very excited tonight. And so this image is one image where the children were just asked generally to draw themselves talking, and you can see this, the child, I'm not sure which one is the child, with a group of friends. In another part of Carla Washington's study, she asked the children to draw themselves speaking in English and in Jamaican Creole. And there were a few examples of where when the children drew themselves in English, they drew themselves with one other person, but when they drew themselves talking in Jamaican Creole, they had the Jamaican community around them. And Carla and colleagues suggested this was quite a good depiction of the differences between the more English-centric conversations and the more Jamaican-centric conversations that occurred in Jamaica. She also undertook longitudinal research, inviting the same child to draw themselves over time. So this is on the left, a drawing of a Jamaican child and talking to others at the age of 4 years of age, and then time 2 is at 5 years of age. And you can see the similarities and differences. I do like the large ears on these kids. I'm interested in where the mouth has gone on the child on the complete right, and I don't have access to the stories that the children have told, so I can't completely look at that. Just recently, my colleagues at Sturt University and I have in fact, in May, so not very long ago, we were at the Speech Pathology Australia National Conference, presenting our work on Children Draw Talking, insights from 200 children from 24 countries. We invited, as part of the Early Childhood Voices conference, we didn't like hosting a conference called Early Childhood Voices without the voices of children. So we invited the children to draw themselves talking using an adaptation of the sound effects study protocol. And 200 children from 24 countries submitted their drawings, and we have made them available in our global online gallery. And you might like, instead of watching Facebook videos of cats, dogs, and whatever else you watch, I think it's a really nice idea. Scan that QR code and watch children draw talking. We've made some little global online galleries, made them into little videos so that you can have a look at these children's drawings and what they say about them. Our participants were from these different countries. You can see in the map, they spoke 23 different languages, and 28.5% of caregivers reported concerns about talking. They ranged in age from 2 to 12 years, but most of them were around about 5 or 6 years of age. This is how we asked them. So it was a completely online process. So we didn't get to watch the child draw and ask them the questions themselves. We asked the children to draw yourself talking to someone, and then we had questions such as who is in the drawing, where are you in the picture, what are you doing, what are you talking about, why did you draw this picture, and how do you feel about your talking? We actually down the bottom said, is it okay for your drawing and words to be made available on a publicly available website so other people around the world can see it? And we asked for the child's mark or signature as well. We had the opportunity for children to change their mind, but we did have a time where they couldn't change their mind, because once it's up on YouTube, that's it. You really can't be assured that it will come down again. We did have ethical approval to analyse this publicly available data set, and our submission is currently in submission. It's undergone a few rounds of peer review, and so we're crossing our fingers that maybe it will get accepted after a bit more revision. Here's some of the ways that our team analysed it. Because we're very interdisciplinary, we're from data science, psychology, physiotherapy, early childhood education, speech pathology, many different disciplines. We came up with 5 different analysis frameworks. We did use focal points as a framework and found that there were actually a lot of emphasis of body parts. This is an example of talking and listening, and I really love this one from Hong Kong, where the girl is talking about finishing her homework, and she's finished her homework both written in English and written in Chinese, which I think is just fantastic. And there was a lot of positivity and vibrancy in relationship and connections. We also used in vivo to do systemic functional linguistic transitivity analysis and a lot of other analyses. So we had a lot of fun applying different protocols to analysing the children's drawings. But overall, to summarise, we found that they, across the whole world, they could use drawing to communicate. One of the surprising things was that a lot of them like to talk to their animals. Even in these images here, this little boy is talking to his dog about poo. And they were quite, thought things were quite funny that they could draw for us. And a lot of them talked about talking outside and drew themselves talking outside. And as a speech and language therapist, there aren't that many times I have undertaken my speech therapy sessions outside. And so it makes me rethink that if children, when they're asked to draw themselves talking, choose to draw themselves outside, what's the difference in how they need to talk, how loud they need to talk, how they talk when they're running around, how they're understood as they're outside? Should we do much more speech therapy outside? Wouldn't that be very nice? All of you people currently in summertime. It's very cold winter time here in Australia. So it was quite frosty this morning. So perhaps we might choose which time of the year we go outside. But I think it can inform our communicative environments, our assessment and intervention practices. So we've been doing this sort of thing for quite a while, but how can we mature in our practices to enhance all children's participation within democratic processes within their families, schools, communities and societies? Well, I've got a few hints of some of the ways that we're trying to mature in our team, 4 different ways, but I feel like we're only just beginning. So let's have a look at some of the things we've been doing. Clark and Moss back in 2001, and again, thank you people from the UK, Clark and Moss are from the UK, suggested that we should use the mosaic approach. We need a range of different approaches to fully understand children. And so in our research about what's life like for babies in childcare, we developed the baby cam. I do know other people now have used baby cam too and developed it independently. I know that in the UK and New Zealand, everybody all had the same idea, which is great. And it was so interesting working back when we did this back in 2011. We began the actual research. We were working with spy companies to make sure that the cameras were not hot and were not too heavy for the babies' heads so that it tipped their heads over. But we got a lot of really interesting insight into what babies saw. And when their little legs waved excitedly when we actually looked at what they were looking at. And this little baby sat there really still, and then all of a sudden her legs would wave excitedly because the carer was at the refrigerator getting things out of the refrigerator, and then their head would go over the door, and the baby's legs would wave excitedly, not their hands or anything else, but their legs. And so we learned many, many things. We also used the MacArthur CDI to map children's first words. And one of the first words that the children said in childcare was dance. I love that it was dance, or dance if you use that vowel. And another one, because it's Australia, was hat. Because of the sunshine, our children are not allowed outside without a hat on. So dance and hat were some of the first words that children said in childcare that gave us a huge insight into what their lives were like in childcare. We've also used the mosaic approach in a more recent paper with my colleagues, Kiri Ballard and Bina Ahmed, who've developed the Say Bananas speech intervention approach. We did this actually during COVID. They've developed this gorgeous Mario-style game with the monkey avatar. And they wanted to have a look at the feasibility and acceptability of using this in rural Australia. It was just gorgeous. We had 45 rural Australian children with speech sound disorders aged from 4 to 10 years. We did collect the usual children's speech, percentage of consonants correct and percentage of vowels correct, and found that there was a significant change over time. However, we used a mosaic approach because we were looking at feasibility and acceptability, and we wanted to know, was it feasible and acceptable for the children? So we used the children's emoji feedback to ask them how Say Bananas was going. And we were pleased to say that the mean was 4.25, which means that it was happy, good fun, heading towards extremely happy, good fun. We also asked children to draw themselves playing the game. And this little one was drawing the monkey on the screen. I'm hoping you can see my mouse, the image on the left with her mother looking over her shoulder. And I quite love this drawing. This is the tablet that the child was playing on, their fingers on either side of the tablet, the monkeys in the middle, and even the A and B and the toggle and the stars, everything that's in the game is actually there, even though the child, has fairly rudimentary drawing skills. It showed that they really, really engaged with the game to know how all of those different features. We also interviewed the children and families and parents together, and did 21 interviews at stage 6, which was at the end. We had 6 stages in the program. And when we asked, for example, and this was all online, right? It was all during COVID lockdown. So it was an online recording, and the mum and the child was there. Sometimes it was the dad and the child. And we said, how do you feel about Say Bananas? And the child said, that one, and pointed to that one, extremely happy. And the parent says, he absolutely loves it. He has dreams about it. And the child said, I imagine we was on the 4th level trying to get the baddies. And the parent says, sometimes it's the highlight of his day. And so doing interviews with focused on the child, but with the parent elaborating, we found was really valuable in understanding what went well and what didn't. There were also some children that said that they got really frustrated because their ability to play the game didn't help them get to the 5th level. And so some of them got cross with the game as well, and told us lots of cool things about their engagement. So let's ask again, how can we mature in our practices to enhance all children's participation? Well, we do need to consider the difference between assent and consent. Legally, consent can only be given over the age of 18. And from an ethical perspective, when we're doing research, we need to get parental consent. But we also always do that in association with the children and ask for their assent. In the sound effects study, we have Appendix B, where we have the exact words that we use with the young children. These were 4 to 5-year-old children, where we talked about what was going on. We talked about how they can say stop if they don't want to, and they can have a rest, and that we'd like to record so that we can listen to it later and don't forget. And that we ask the children to call themselves another name. And if you read any of our team's research, you'll see we have the most fabulous names because we actually use the names the children decide to call themselves. So we have the Incredible Hulk and Princess and Bowser and all sorts of names. Some of them are quite funny, and we use whatever they tell us. We also, when we're talking to them, we say mum and dad can sign their names if you say it's okay, and then you can sign your name too. And we ask the child to sign their name with whatever they want to sign it with. And the children love to do that, whether it's a smiley face or a cross or just a squiggle. They think they're very grown up and they like to give permission. We do think about how children withdraw assent over time. And I've just put down, instead of having images, my colleague Anna Cronin undertook a PhD some time ago with me and Sarah Verdon, looking at working with toddlers with cleft lip and palate. One way that she really knew, and she would go and visit the child in different places in their homes and at swimming lessons and at preschool and at different places. And she was delighted that one day the child, as she was setting up and getting ready to set up the video camera, the child had already started setting up with her own toys and doll, a pretend video camera and things too, to say, you know, I'm going to do it just like you. And we saw that that was giving us assent from the child. We do lots of things with children, and actually, I'm just going to go back to this image, because this image in our listening to babies, there was a little child who was feeling very sad at one time, and another little baby actually put a clear shawl over her head so that she felt safe and could be included. And then the baby stopped crying. So instead of us stopping the event, the little baby, not the big one, but the little one, came up with a solution so this baby felt safe and was giving assent to keep going. Children are remarkable if you give them the chance. So think about assent and withdrawing assent. Another way that we can mature is by using the Lundy model. Laura Lundy, as I said, is a child rights lawyer in Belfast in Northern Ireland, and does amazing things if you've not come across her. Back in 2007, she published this paper called Voice is Not Enough, where she outlined the Lundy model and talked about how space, voice, audience, and influence are important. It's all well and good to give children space and the right to express their view, but they actually have to have a place for the views to be given due weight. There has to be the opportunity for influence and audience. So, for example, one of the things that we have done with our Children Draw talking work is the United Nations actually put out a call last year for children to shape what the United Nations Convention, Universal Declaration of the Rights, no, hang on. The United Nations Declaration of Human Rights would look like at its 75th birthday. And so we actually submitted this document. It had more pages, and it's now available on the UN website as our children's voice to the UN. And we have showed the children. This is actually my, my Australian Advisory Committee here, and they are very proud of their advice and some of their drawings going to the UN, as well as colleagues and other children from around the world. I said I'd come back to the work of Jane McCormack, Elise Baker and Kate Crowe. They actually thought about this and the audience and influence in a different way. They thought about how it's important to have something to say and how that can be constrained due to discrimination, due to the fact that a child is young, or that a child has a communication disability, or that a child speaks another language. And it can be constrained due to the way that they say it, due to their communication disorder. They actually analysed the submissions to an Australian National Senate inquiry about the prevalence of speech, language and communication disorders and the availability of speech pathology services in Australia. This included 305 submissions to the Senate inquiry and also 17 accounts from children and adults with a history of childhood communication disorder. Some of them were children and some of them were adults. They found 4 different themes, and I'm going to just give you an example of theme 2. My communication disorder impacts how I interact with others and how they interact with me. One of the comments is that my life is pretty busy. I have lots of different activities and hobbies. However, my communication disorder has had a significant and profound impact on my life. And here is an exact quote from one of the people who submitted it. They said, "When I was at school, I can remember spending every lunchtime by myself because no one will even try to talk to me." And I've added the image from before, from a completely different study from our young man called Ewan, not his real name, his pseudonym, who similarly said, "They won't talk to me." This is an image and a message that happens again and again, particularly with people who are having difficulty talking and being understood. So how can we mature in our processes? Well, this is where I think we have a very long way to go. Shire has done some really interesting work. He initially had a ladder to participation, and now more recently he's developed a matrix for analysing children's engagement in the research processes. Almost every single study that I have shown you to date fits there. Children are not involved in the research process. A couple of ours has a small amount of collaboration, but we've never had children deciding the research question up until just fairly recently. People, my PhD student Holly McAllister and Suzanne Hoff and I are doing some work using Talanoa approaches with Pacifica children in Australia and across the Pacific Islands to think about this. I've also been invited to work with my colleagues Emily Jane Woodhead and Carolyn Gregorick and Sarah Bartlett and others with an Indigenous Australian community they have invited us to come in and co-design and co-research how we can support children's speech, language and communication. So that's really exciting, and we've done lots and lots of yarning and listening and thinking together. We haven't completely begun the research because we've spent a year and a half yarning and talking about it and preparing and deciding on the questions. So this type of work takes a long, long time to do. We are also so excited to announce that Charles Sturt University has just said that the research work that we are doing is now appropriate to become a centre. And so we're just establishing the Children's Voices Centre, and in about 2 weeks, the website will be up. And we have been given a building that we are calling and going to work with children to establish as the treehouse. So you're not only going to have to come and see kangaroos, but also you're going to have to run to Charles Sturt University next year and see our treehouse, because we see our Children's Voices Centre as a beacon of innovation and inclusivity, empowering all children to communicate, collaborate and create a better future for themselves and the world. So how can we mature in our practices to enhance all children's participation within democratic processes? Well, using mosaic approaches, really thinking about assent, consent and power, applying the Lundy model, considering children's engagement and many other ways. Children can change the world. We've got some new opportunities, and as I said, it's really exciting to be giving this lecture with child language teaching and therapy, because it's wonderful that the editors and I are in conversation about announcing a future special issue about listening to children. So if you're doing this work, and I noticed that somebody said that they're using some of our books in their doctoral work, so please get your doctoral work ready to submit to this special issue when we announce it. Watch this space. I think it's going to be really exciting. Also, we have the Early Childhood Voices Conference that our university runs. It's completely free, completely online, completely asynchronous, so that whatever time morning is for you, you are welcome to join. It's a multidisciplinary, peer-reviewed conference, and it's completely free, supporting social justice, because our university's motto is for the public good. Here is the QR code. You can participate in 3 ways. Register to attend, you can do it right now. All you have to do is put your name, country and email address. That's it. You're registered. It costs nothing else. You're very welcome to submit an abstract about your research, as long as it is about early childhood in many different ways and forms. We love work about early childhood voices, but also the people who support young children, and supporting those people are also very welcome. And please, we finished our work with Children Draw Talking at the moment. This year, we're inviting children to draw playing, so that we know what our treehouse building and online treehouse should be like. So please ask children to draw or create playing. We have listened to feedback, and children who are blind or have vision loss have difficulty drawing. So children, and some children just don't like drawing. So now we've added the word create, so people can create a Lego model of themselves playing, or a Play-Doh model, or whatever they like. Take a photograph of it, answer the questions, upload it, make sure the child has given assent. And every child's drawing, we don't judge what wonderful artists they are. We actually want to hear from children to know what they're doing. So please think about how you can support children now. They are not the people of tomorrow. They are the people of today. They have a right to be taken seriously, to be treated with tenderness and respect. They should be allowed to grow into whoever they were meant to be. The unknown person inside of each of them is our hope for the future. And children can make such a huge difference in the world. So let's make sure they do. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Sharynne. I'm sure everybody will be clapping from where they are all over the world. Really wonderful talk. Thank you. And so lovely to hear and talk about children being at the absolute focus of all the work that I'm sure everybody on the call is involved in. I'm just aware it's 11 o'clock, so some people may need to go. So we will go straight to questions if that's okay, Sharynne. So absolutely fine.
And please, thank you for staying online. And I'm absolutely fine about people going. And I'd love to see your faces too, if you feel like just showing me your face for a second. It's nice to know who was here.
And Judy,
sometimes I
sorry.
actually take a photograph of everybody, but I don't know if people want to do that.
Well, Sharynne, what I was going to suggest, if you want to stop sharing, then we actually can do exactly that and see people.
Yeah, sure.
And if people could show their faces, that would be fabulous. And I just wanted to just quickly mention that we are recording this and it is going to be available. But because we're recording it, whoever asks a question, we do need your permission. So if you ask a question, if you could then just in the chat put your email, and we just need to send you a consent form. Sorry, Judy, thanks.
That's fine, thank you. So if people, I can see everybody on the screens, if anyone's got a question for Sharynne and wants to put their hand up and ask Sharynne a question in person, so we try that first.
Or how about we have our photo while everybody's here and hasn't got a child in the future that they want to so if you want a photo, Sam Burr, and I noticed that Reem's here, all these people I know, all my friends, it's lovely. Okay, let's all smile. 1, 2, 3.
I'm taking a photo too.
Oh, look, Claire, Carol, all these people that I said are amazing. You'll have to get them in the future.
It's every year.
Great.
Right,
All right.
Questions?
Yeah. Any questions for Sharynne?
Oh, Anna gets the best question. She's brought her child.
Great. I mean, I can kickstart. I just had a question. I was just thinking really of the application of the work. So I know colleagues in here will work every day with children, young people with speech, language and communication needs, and whether that's through schools, education, health and so on, will have a role in capturing that child's voice. So for example, in schools, there'll be pupil voice type activities. So the question really was just around the kind of everyday application of that. So if you have a pupil voice committee, for example, in a school, should we all be using drawing and other methods to try and capture that voice?
Look, I certainly know many people. Oh, there's Jane and Rena. I'm seeing all. I think I should just be quiet. All my colleagues are online who do this work. There's, I certainly know that, you know, my education colleagues are very good at capturing student voice. And actually, when I travel around the world, I do know that people in the UK and Ireland are amazing at capturing student voice and are not and are much better than many other parts of the world. So I'm really interested. Perhaps people can pop in the chat ways that they do this every day in their own work. Certainly, I know when we launched the Listening to Children book in 2011, there were people who would send me images of how they'd changed their clinical practice. And when they were doing the parent interview, they would ask the child to draw themselves talking and then get the child to explain and unpack for them when they felt happy talking and not happy talking, so that it really changed their intervention goals based on that. And that was back in 2011. And so I know that there's so many other things that people are doing now. I almost feel you should be answering. So please write as much as you can in the chat so people know.
Great, thanks, Sharynne. Yes, please do that. Stephen Parsons. Keep going, Stephen.
I'm mute. I was clicking, sorry. Sharynne, that was absolutely brilliant. It's so inspiring, your positivity, and I think child-centered approach is just amazing and a real inspiration. Thank you. Just you alluded to it with talking about blind children or children who didn't like drawing, but I was trying to think about children with fine motor difficulties or more complex needs. How do you take that into account with your work, and particularly with interpretation of the drawing? So yeah.
So in fact, my colleagues in a school in my hometown have been using this with children with very complex communication needs and kids who use communication boards and eye gaze and so forth, and have been using iPads and taking photographs and making photo stories and things. And I can see people nodding. I'm sure there's people here who are doing this as well. That you know, I mean, we are creative. We are, as speech language therapists, we are very good at enabling kids to communicate. But sometimes what we get them to communicate is whatever cards we chop up for them to communicate. And so one of the things that my colleague Kate Crow from Iceland and her colleagues suggested was that we have a theme like a sustainable development goal that we use in our speech therapy intervention rather than a random set of cards, where children help come up with a solution for the world based on the sustainable development goal that really interests them. You know, I think we underestimate children's capacity for creating solutions for the world and so forth. So, you know, that's something that I think, you know, regardless of the kids' ability to, kids as in children's ability to communicate, they have a lot to say and a lot of insight into things that we don't notice.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Stephen. Just a question from Sam Burr, who obviously you know each other. There's Sam, I can see here. So just on the chat, Sharynne, so have you involved children interpreting each other's drawings outputs? Wonder whether their perspectives perhaps are more aligned to each other's than ours are, and so they could offer insights adults might miss. Yeah.
Sam Burr, you're always on it. I've just had a lovely 5 weeks at the University of Bristol as a visiting distinguished professor, and Sam is there. So it's very nice to see you again, Sam, and thank you to all your crowd for the amazing things that are happening, and that work that your colleagues have done, and that book about listening to silent voices. I don't know, Sam, if you can pop that in the chat for people. It's not children, but it's really powerful and got some great things. I've only done this, Sam, with my advisory group. We are getting much closer in our treehouse work to doing that as well. But I haven't done it. I don't know, has anybody else done it? Please talk up. I'm not the be all and end all of answers. I'm more asking questions and getting your ideas.
Yep, so I think Claire Carroll. Hi, Claire. Yep,
Yeah,
so
go, Claire. I think Claire should talk.
you can offer her an invitation. Claire, you happy to come on?
Yeah, very happy.
Right, thanks, Claire.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Sharynne, again. And I was just typing there, and I'm thinking about, I had children, when my children in my PhD study used to sense scan, and they were developmental needs. And I printed out the images from their sense cams and then used those in interviews with them. So that was probably another way of probably them interpreting or sharing. I found out more from the family, or found out more for who the people were in the photos and so on. That was just to answer that question. That's the only thing I have done so far. Thanks, everyone.
Great, thanks, Claire. That's really helpful. And there's a couple of other things in the chat coming up as well. So thank you for that. Any other thoughts or comments for Sharynne, or thoughts and comments to share?
I'm just getting up the global online gallery for people.
Oh, great.
There's actually 4 galleries. So I'm just going to take a shot of one of them and put it in the, oh, hang on, I need to give it to everyone. There we go. You can have a look at that. Oh, thank you, Marie-Therese. I don't know you at all. You're very onto it. You get the prize.
Thanks, Sharynne. Thanks for putting those links in. Lovely. So we just, didn't we, Sharynne mentioned the talk, the special issue around this topic. So that's something Vicky and I and Sharynne will take forward after the lecture today, so keep an eye out for that. The way that will work is there'll be kind of information that will come out about the special issue and call for papers and so on, and the timeline. So do keep checking back on the CLTT website and also the Twitter feed as well, and we'll make sure that's disseminated very widely, just where all the many colleagues around the world. It's lovely to have such a global presence. So just where I couldn't
say one more thing, Judy, if it's okay. Rena Lyons has just left, and so Claire, can you please tell Rena that I'm going to say this? Sometimes we think that this type of research is kind of low-level research, but Rena Lyons won the Editor's Award for the American Journal of Speech, Language and Hearing Research, so their top journal for ASHA, a few years ago, for her work with Sue Ralston, where she talked about listening to children. So JSLHR, you know, is one of the top journals in the world. I'm aware, Stephen, that you're there with IJLCD and other people, but it's one of our top journals, and it's an American journal, and American people are less using these approaches to a lesser extent than in the UK at the moment. That's my personal opinion, just from getting around and having lots of friends. So perhaps there's things that I haven't seen, but it's really encouraging to see that even in JSLHR, that they recognise the expertise and quality and importance of this research in Rena Lyons and Sue Ralston's paper. And there might be other co-authors, sorry if there are and you're online, but you know, it's not sort of second-rate research. It's really important research. Thank you, Anna, for your claps, and your child is clearly in the background. So that's just what I wanted to say.
Great, Sharynne. And just, I think colleagues on here, so CLTT publishes and has published a lot of qualitative type work over the years around children and young people's perspectives of different aspects of having speech, language and communication needs. So if you're interested in different qualitative research methods, there's quite a range that's been used in CLTT, so do check that out. Wonderful.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much again, Sharynne. I'm just looking at Vicky and Tara because I've probably forgotten something, so please do prompt me.
I mean, just again, if you've spoken, please do put your email, because we won't be able to release the recording unless we have your signature. So what will happen is we will Tara will send you the form. If you can get it back to us straight away, I will organize the recording. And Tara, just remind us, it will go on our YouTube page and CLTT webpage. Is that right?
Yeah, it will do, Vicky.
Okay, brilliant.
All the up.
And then just to reiterate what Judy said about CLTT is really, you know, the very essence of CLTT is about teachers and speech and language therapists working with children and young people with SLCN. So please do put in papers, because we're always looking for this type of work. I couldn't agree with you more, Sharynne. It's brilliant work.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. It was such fun putting together all the things, and there were so many other things that I didn't say. So it was lovely to compile it all together. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you for everybody for coming and making the time, particularly as people are in different time zones as well. But please, lovely to be, sorry, I'm rambling now, but thanks again, Sharynne. Wonderful talk, wonderful morning. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye, everyone. Good morning, good night, wherever you are in the world. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Sharynne, thank you so much. Bye, everyone.